Okay, so today I'm going to make paint. Well, no, actually, I'm not going to exactly paint, I'm going to make copper carbonate. And in order to do this, it's actually pretty simple. All I need is to add baking soda with some copper sulfate, and this should give us the copper carbonate. So, let's get started. So here's what you need. You're going to need baking soda, copper sulfate. Also don't forget to wear safety goggles. I would also recommend some gloves, but I'm not going to use them since I kind of have to use my camera. Filtering paper, and if we include a filtering paper, also a funnel, spoon, and some labware. Now personally I'm also going to use a magnetic stirrer, and I'm also going to use a kettle. So let's get started, shall we? So first step is to obviously fill the kettle with some water and turn it on and let the water boil. In the meantime, I'm going to prepare a beaker and drop in a magnetic stirring bar. Now by the way, we don't really need it to boil, and since I let it also cool off a little bit, I'm going to fill about half the beaker with water. Now the reason why I did this and boil the water is simply just because it's going to make mixing copper sulfate easier. So I'm going to start turning on the stirring, and I'm going to slowly add copper sulfate. So I'm going to do it honestly in a random amount. I'm going to take my huge bag. I'm going to jump till the water seems to have a pretty aqua and beautiful color. Now I'm going to be honest, I added still a pretty good amount of it, but as you can see it did turn a pretty deeper blue, and this is where I settled in. Now we will still are going to need the stirring, and now I'm going to add the sodium bicarbonate, or also known as sodium hydrogen carbonate. As you can see, it will bubble, and this is why I have stirring on, and I would recommend you to do this in slow steps. I will now display the reaction that is actually happening here, and as you can see, yes, I know I'm using sodium hydrogen carbonate, which is not really sodium carbonate, and this will still not influence the output. The output will still be copper carbonate, which is exactly what we want. We're going to explore, as mentioned in the intro, some of its uses later in the video. Now, let's actually do the experiment. And as you can see, it actually turned into this turquoise green, which actually looks like the copper carbonate. I had to stir in the foam so it didn't really top over. So again, do this a bit slower so you do not really get the foam to top over your beaker. And I slowly added the sodium bicarbonate till it did not bubble. And now finally, after a grueling task of keeping the foam inside and stirring to the foam not to escape, I'm actually now done, and it does not foam, so it should be ready. So I turned off the magnetic stirrer, and we are nearly ready for the next step. So basically now we're going to need the filtering paper and the funnel. I'm also going to use one of these, and I'm going to show you how I built the filtration setup. So basically I'm going to use this as my waste collecting beaker, and I'm just going to add the funnel right in, and I'm going to adjust it just like this. Now we're going to add the filtering paper, and I'm going to fold it one time as such, and then I'm going to fold it again as such, and this should give us a filtering paper good enough for this, and just like that we have a gravitational filtration setup. What was only left to do is only to obviously pour in the solution of which it contained our copper carbonate, and this will actually take a while. Now as you can see, it really takes quite a while. Now, looking at the waste that we collected, it should just be water and some type of sodium sulfate. It looks pretty clear, but due to its slight hint of blue, I think either a little bit of copper sulfate maybe in, but due to its I would still say that some of the copper carbonate just got in through the filter, and that is what makes this a little bit slight blue. Now I'm going to use the power of editing and the fact that I don't have to do this from head to start, and I'm going to show you the final product. So yeah, here we have the final copper carbonate, and this is how it looks like. Now this is not the same batch I did, it is a different one. And here I collected it in a little vial. But I feared you can actually make paint with it. Well, that's what I told you in the beginning. And I guess I'm going to try that out. Now basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix a little bit of starch with some water, and to this solution I'm just going to add our copper carbonate. So let's actually see if we can make a little paint out of it. And after mixing for a while, we can see that we are having some sort of cyan turquoise paint. So let's actually put it on paper. So I guess I'm going to try to draw something on it. Now I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty sure this is really not the way you make paint out of copper carbonate, but whatever. It does seem to work to some extent. It is probably just simply not the way, and I'm really sure of it. But anyway, this is just a neat experiment. What we can actually do with copper carbonate is actually far cooler. Now the actual reason why I did this is actually because using acids we can actually make interesting salts. But now I added hydrochloric acid, and we're actually making copper chloride, which is a pretty interesting salt too. And since it is a carbonate, it basically reacts with every acid, so this is also the reason why I actually made this, because we can now do interesting salts with it. Well, it actually turned out that the paint was not as bad, but yeah, it is still pretty weak, and I may have to add more, and I'll have to leave it to dry. But in reality, it actually looks far more vivid, and it was an interesting experiment. Although, yes, I didn't really do a paint that much. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and this was my video on copper carbonate. And if you have any other suggestions of a very interesting chemical that I could try to do at home, but obviously also safe enough, please recommend, and I hope to see you in next video. And photonic luminescence, goodbye.